Birth of a states' rights Southerner, 1790 to 1806. John Tyler was born on March 29, 1790, into the world of the Southern planter elite in Charles City County, Virginia, at a plantation called Greenway. His father, John Tyler Sr., was a prominent figure in Virginian politics, a judge, a Speaker of the House of Delegates, and a friend of Thomas Jefferson. Tyler's mother, Mary Monroe Armistead, came from a well-established family with deep roots in Virginia's colonial history. Young John was raised in a world built on slavery, agriculture, and the philosophy of individual liberty, as long as that liberty belonged to wealthy white men. He grew up witnessing conversations around state sovereignty, limited federal power, and agrarian values, all of which would shape his political ideology. He was delicate in health but intellectually curious. Despite childhood illnesses including chronic diarrhea and joint pain, he developed a strong memory and a keen interest in law, politics, and philosophy. The Tyler household was filled with books, debates, and visitors from Virginia's elite class. Unlike many future presidents who rose from humble beginnings, John Tyler came from privilege, educated, connected, and confident in his right to lead. Education at William and Mary and legal training, 1806 to 1811. At the age of 12, Tyler began formal classical studies under private tutors. His routine included Latin, Greek, mathematics, and logic. At 17, he graduated from the College of William and Mary, becoming one of its youngest graduates. His education emphasized law, rhetoric, and the Enlightenment ideals that inspired Jeffersonian democracy. After graduation, Tyler studied law under the guidance of his father and was admitted to the Virginia bar in 1809, at just 19 years old. He began practicing law in Richmond, where he quickly gained a reputation for being articulate and ideologically rigid. Unlike many contemporaries, Tyler did not seek wealth through commerce or speculation. His goal was clear: a political career driven by principle. By 1811, he was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, launching a public service journey that would span over 4 decades. Even as a state legislator, he opposed federal expansion, voted against centralized authority, and stood firmly with Southern interests. The War of 1812 and entry into national politics, 1812 to 1816. The War of 1812 was a defining moment in early American history, a test of independence and national will. Tyler, then in his early 20s, supported the war against Britain but distrusted the growing power of the federal government managing it. He served briefly as a militia captain, but never saw battle. His commitment to states' autonomy remained firm. He believed state militias should not be absorbed into a centralized national force unless absolutely necessary. In 1816, Tyler won a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing Virginia's 23rd district. There, he joined the opposition to Henry Clay's American System, a program of federal roads, banks, and tariffs aimed at strengthening the Union. Tyler's speeches were full of Jeffersonian language. He called the Second Bank of the United States unconstitutional, rejected internal improvement bills, and voted against protective tariffs, which he saw as benefiting the industrial North at the South's expense. He had little patience for political compromise. For Tyler, the Constitution was clear, and any interpretation beyond its exact text was dangerous. His stubbornness earned both respect and criticism in equal measure. Love, marriage, and plantation life, 1813 to 1825. In 1813, Tyler married Letitia Christian, the daughter of a wealthy Virginia planter. Letitia was quiet, religious, and deeply committed to her home. She avoided politics and focused on raising their large family. Together, they would eventually have 8 children. During this period, Tyler lived the life of a Southern planter at his estate, later known as Sherwood Forest. He managed a large tobacco farm worked by dozens of enslaved African Americans. He saw slavery not only as an economic necessity but as a constitutional right, something embedded in the social fabric of the South. Tyler's household was run with discipline and religious devotion. He enjoyed music, played the violin, and spent time teaching his children. Despite his wealth and comfort, he was constantly reading, writing, and preparing for a return to higher office. This was a calm but foundational period in his life, solidifying his image as a Virginian gentleman, committed to honor, tradition, and constitutional purity. Governor of Virginia and rise to the Senate, 1825 to 1836. Tyler re-entered politics as governor of Virginia in 1825, a largely ceremonial role, but one he used to call for educational reforms and internal improvements, as long as they were funded at the state level. In 1827, he was elected to the U.S. Senate by the Virginia General Assembly. There, his national profile rose. Tyler was initially allied with Andrew Jackson, supporting him as a champion of the common man. But their relationship soured over time, especially as Jackson expanded presidential power. Tyler turned against the National Bank, which Jackson famously dismantled, the Force Bill, which authorized federal troops to collect tariffs in South Carolina, the spoils system, which rewarded political allies with government jobs. In 1836, when Virginia's legislature instructed him to vote in favor of Jackson's policies, Tyler refused. Rather than compromise, he resigned from the Senate in protest, choosing principle over position. This rare move earned him national headlines and the admiration of the Whig Party, who saw him as a useful Southern counterweight to Democrat power. The Whigs and the rise to the vice presidency, 1836 to 1840. After resigning from the Senate in protest, Tyler was politically adrift. He had no party base, no clear path forward, but he had principles. And in the volatile 1830s, principles had value. The Whig Party, formed in opposition to President Andrew Jackson, saw in Tyler an appealing symbol, a Southern statesman with a record of fighting executive tyranny. Though Tyler did not support all Whig positions, especially on the National Bank and federal spending, he shared their disdain for Jacksonian centralism. In the 1836 election, the Whigs ran multiple regional candidates to prevent Democrat Martin Van Buren from gaining a majority. Tyler was one of them, a favorite son candidate in Virginia. Though the strategy failed, it placed Tyler firmly on the national radar. In 1840, the Whigs decided to go all in with a single ticket. William Henry Harrison, the aging war hero of Tippecanoe, was selected as presidential candidate. To balance the ticket and win Southern support, the Whigs chose John Tyler as vice president. The campaign became one of the most famous in American history. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. The campaign was built more on slogans and spectacle than policy. The Whigs portrayed Harrison as a humble frontiersman, despite his elite background, and Van Buren as an out-of-touch aristocrat. The public responded with enthusiasm. Harrison and Tyler won a massive electoral victory, ushering in a new era, or so it seemed. His Accidency, the first vice president to inherit the presidency, 1841. On March 4, 1841, Harrison was inaugurated as the 9th president of the United States. At 68, he delivered the longest inaugural address in history, nearly 2 hours in the freezing cold without a coat or hat. Within a month, he was dead from pneumonia. On April 4, 1841, Vice President John Tyler received word that the president was dead. In that moment, American constitutional history changed forever. The Constitution was vague on succession. It stated that the powers and duties of the presidency shall devolve on the vice president if the president died. But did that mean Tyler became the actual president or merely acting president? Tyler chose boldly. He declared himself president, not acting or temporary. He took the presidential oath, the first to do so under such circumstances, and moved into the White House. Critics mocked him as his Accidency, and both political opponents and allies questioned the legality of his actions. But Tyler set a lasting precedent. The vice president fully becomes president upon the death of the incumbent. A rule followed ever since and codified in the 25th Amendment over a century later. Betrayed by his own party, 1841 to 1842, though Tyler was now president, he was still seen as a placeholder by the Whigs. They expected him to rubber stamp their legislative agenda. But John Tyler was never one to compromise his principles. The central issue was the National Bank. Henry Clay, the real power behind the Whigs, wanted to resurrect the Bank of the United States. Tyler, however, believed the bank was unconstitutional. When Tyler vetoed 2 different bank bills, the Whigs turned on him. In a stunning political collapse, His entire cabinet resigned, except for Secretary of State Daniel Webster. The Whigs expelled Tyler from their party, making him the first and only president in U.S. history to govern without a party. The House of Representatives attempted to impeach him, introducing a resolution for misconduct. It failed, but the damage was done. Tyler stood alone, abandoned by allies, opposed by Congress, and ridiculed by the press. Despite this, he continued to act independently. He vetoed tariff bills, battled over appointments, and tried to shape a presidency based on principled constitutionalism, not party politics. Domestic and foreign policy initiatives. Despite his political isolation, Tyler's presidency was not without accomplishments. Pushpin 1. Foreign policy success. Webster-Ashburton Treaty, 1842. Tyler retained Daniel Webster to negotiate a treaty with Britain. The Webster-Ashburton Treaty resolved a major boundary dispute in the Northeast, near Maine and New Brunswick, and helped prevent potential conflict. It also established cooperation against the Atlantic slave trade, though America's enforcement remained weak. Pushpin 2. Naval expansion. Tyler recognized the importance of a strong navy. He pushed forward major improvements and shipbuilding, laying the groundwork for future American sea power. Pushpin 3. Western settlement and infrastructure. Tyler supported the Preemption Act of 1841, which allowed squatters to buy public land before it was offered for public sale. This encouraged westward migration and development. He also oversaw the introduction of the telegraph, approving Samuel Morse's request to build the first experimental line between Washington and Baltimore. The era of instant communication had begun, but nothing would define his presidency more than the contentious issue of Texas. The Texas Gamble, 1843 to 1845. The Republic of Texas, having won independence from Mexico in 1836, wanted to join the United States. But the question of slavery, expansion, and war with Mexico made the issue explosive. Tyler saw annexing Texas as a way to expand Southern influence, a constitutional opportunity to extend American land and ideals, a legacy-defining move. He made annexation his central goal, despite fierce opposition from Northern abolitionists, Democrats, and Whigs alike. His first treaty attempt in 1844 failed in the Senate, due to fears it would lead to war with Mexico and upset the balance between slave and free states. But Tyler persisted. After firing his entire cabinet and bringing in pro-annexation allies like John C. Calhoun, he pursued a joint resolution of Congress instead of a treaty, needing only a simple majority. As the 1844 election approached, Tyler withdrew from re-election to avoid splitting the Democratic vote, making way for James K. Polk, who supported annexation. On March 1, 1845, just 3 days before leaving office, Congress passed the resolution to annex Texas. Though Polk would complete the final steps, Tyler had won. Texas became the 28th state in December 1845. The victory came at a cost. It inflamed sectional tensions, angered Mexico, and helped lay the groundwork for the Mexican-American War. Return to Sherwood Forest, 1845 to 1853. When John Tyler left office in March 1845, he returned to his beloved plantation, Sherwood Forest, in Charles City County, Virginia. Set amidst rolling fields and ancient trees, the estate became a symbol of his retreat from the turbulent world of national politics. Though he had no political power anymore, Tyler continued to write and speak on national affairs. He remained deeply concerned about what he saw as growing federal overreach, rising Northern abolitionist agitation, and increasing threats to the Southern way of life. Tyler resumed the quiet, aristocratic lifestyle he always cherished, managing his plantation, supervising enslaved workers, riding horses, reading classical literature, writing letters to newspapers and friends. He was not a recluse, but neither was he a popular figure. Most Whigs still viewed him as a traitor to their cause, and Democrats never fully trusted him. Tyler remained politically isolated but personally content. Return to Sherwood Forest, 1845 to 1853. When John Tyler left office in March 1845, he returned to his beloved plantation, Sherwood Forest, in Charles City County, Virginia. Set amidst rolling fields and ancient trees, the estate became a symbol of his retreat from the turbulent world of national politics. Though he had no political power anymore, Tyler continued to write and speak on national affairs. He remained deeply concerned about what he saw as growing federal overreach, rising Northern abolitionist agitation, and increasing threats to the Southern way of life. Tyler resumed the quiet, aristocratic lifestyle he always cherished, managing his plantation, supervising enslaved workers, riding horses, reading classical literature, writing letters to newspapers and friends. He was not a recluse, but neither was he a popular figure. Most Whigs still viewed him as a traitor to their cause, and Democrats never fully trusted him. Tyler remained politically isolated but personally content. A second marriage and a larger legacy, 1844 to 1859. In the White House, just 2 years after Letitia's death, Tyler met Julia Gardner, a 24-year-old New York socialite from a wealthy family. Tyler was 54, more than twice her age. After an initial secret courtship, they were married on June 26, 1844, in a small ceremony in New York. Julia instantly became First Lady and brought a glamorous charm to the White House that had been lacking. She was young, fashionable, outspoken, and loved the spotlight. Together, John and Julia had 7 children, bringing Tyler's total to 15, the most of any U.S. president. Fun fact: one of Tyler's grandsons was alive as late as 2020, due to his father also marrying late in life. Julia encouraged Tyler to host large parties, improve social customs, and maintain a public presence even after his presidency. While John aged, she remained socially active and politically opinionated, often defending her husband's controversial positions long after his death. Death and disgrace, 1862. On January 18, 1862, John Tyler suffered a stroke and died in Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy. His death came quietly, in the shadow of a war that had already claimed thousands of lives. He was the first former U.S. president to die during a time of national disunion, and the only one to ever be viewed by the federal government as having rebelled against it. There was no official mourning from Washington. No flags were lowered. No public eulogies. The U.S. government refused to recognize his death at all. Instead, Tyler was given a state funeral by the Confederate government and was buried with honors in Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, under a Confederate flag. Conclusion: a complex and controversial legacy. John Tyler remains one of the most controversial figures in the history of the American presidency. White heavy checkmark his lasting achievements, established presidential succession by asserting full authority upon Harrison's death, protected constitutional boundaries by vetoing legislation he believed was unconstitutional, even at personal political cost, successfully orchestrated the annexation of Texas, a momentous, if divisive, expansion of U.S. territory, strengthened the U.S. Navy and laid groundwork for technological progress. Crossmark his greatest failures, alienated both major parties, making governance nearly impossible. Refused to evolve his stance on slavery, defending it as a constitutional necessity. Ended his life as a Confederate legislator, siding with rebellion against the very Union he once led. Became the only U.S. president not honored by the federal government upon his death. He was a man of contradictions, deeply principled yet politically isolated, patriotic yet supportive of secession, intelligent yet unable to build lasting coalitions. His presidency is often remembered more for its procedural significance than for its policy accomplishments. Yet, without Tyler's bold assertion of authority in 1841, future transitions of power may have been chaotic. He was, in many ways, the first modern president, someone who believed in presidential independence, not party loyalty. Though history has often marginalized him, the shadow he cast is long. His legacy continues to challenge us to reconsider what it means to lead a nation in times of uncertainty, division, and change.